I was about 13 when this happened, and I lived right on the beach. If you walked about 1 mile down the beach from my house, you'd get to a place where the ocean left behind a sort of lake, where my friends and I liked to hang out. Nearby were 2 dirt roads. At the time, I had a German Shepherd, and my mom used to kick me out of the house every weekend for a few hours to play with the dog, which I didn't mind. There was a cliff above the beach you could take to walk to the lake, overlooking the beach but covered in forest. That day was particularly hot, so I chose to walk through the forest to stay cool, sparing my dog and me the heat. I'd done this many times before and wasn't afraid. As I was walking, I heard muffled footsteps behind me. My dog was far ahead, off leash, and I quickly realized someone must be sneaking up on me because it was nearly impossible to walk quietly on the dry foliage. I made a run for it, heading for the exit of the forest, and the footsteps became more audible behind me. I wasn't too worried since I made it out to the open area by the lake, where I could already spot a friend of mine. My dog was already in the water, and as I went to greet my friend, we noticed a large man approaching us. He must have been close to 2 meters tall and very slim. He started talking to us kindly, and not knowing any better, we were polite. At the time, I didn't connect the footsteps I'd heard in the forest with this man, but later I did. He asked a lot of questions about us, where we were from, if anyone was with us, and so on. Slowly, we started to get creeped out. We said our goodbyes, telling him we had to meet other friends, and moved further down the lake. We sat down, chatting, when my dog suddenly started growling. She never growled, so this caught me by surprise. I looked to see what she was growling at, and there he was, the man, standing about 50 meters behind us. Now we were catching on. We moved again, and sure enough, he followed, this time getting even closer. By now, we were seriously freaked out. We were being followed, and we were all alone. My friend called her mom to come pick us up, but she was at least an hour away. That meant we were stuck with this creep for an hour or so. The more we moved, the closer he got. I had leashed my dog by now, as she was going completely rabid at this man. Every time we looked at him, he smiled back at us like we were old friends. He tailed us for a while until we finally saw my friend's mom's car pull up to the dirt road, which was about 200 meters from us. To get there, we had to cross the area where the man was standing. We were terrified. Her mother saw the situation and started running toward us, which caught the man's attention. That was our chance to dash. I don't think I've ever run that far or that fast in my life. My dog was running with us, and I let go of her leash. When we got to the car, we hastily jumped in as the man ran toward us. We stayed inside while my friend's mom called 911, and we waited as the man started throwing rocks at the car and wailing. Eventually, he ran off as the police arrived. They questioned everyone and went looking for him, but they never found him. To this day, I'm still terrified he's out there in that forest waiting. I didn't know my friend would be there that day, and I have no idea what would have happened if she hadn't been. I didn't have a phone or any way to contact anyone. I'm pretty sure if that man had gotten to me, he would have overpowered my dog. I'm not proud of any of this. I have a big family and we're super close. When I was in high school, my aunt was dating this guy who seemed really wealthy, but no one really knew what he did. I think anyone could have guessed, though. I asked my aunt to introduce me to her boyfriend, and we talked about how I could work for him. Without going into too much detail, he let me work for him. I sold to some people I knew. I went to high school in an area where there were a lot of drugs. I knew a few boys who claimed they were already using this stuff, so I offered to sell it to them. Surprisingly, they had really big orders for me. I didn't ask any questions, I just went along with it. I was making about $3,000 a month from this. Not enough to retire or anything, but definitely more than most 17-year-olds made. I never made a point to flaunt my money or anything. I thought I kept it well hidden. At least I thought I did. What bothers me is that there's no way of knowing. One Saturday morning, I walked over to my friend's house for a birthday party. Not a wild one or anything, just a cute little breakfast. On my way home, this guy I'd never seen before pulled over and got out of his car. He was well-dressed and a bit older. When he got out of his car, I thought he was a cop. He was acting like a cop. I was ready to surrender because I didn't think I could make an escape. But then he pulled out a switchblade and told me to give him my purse. He said something like, "Don't act dumb, girl. I know you have money. It's okay. We can make this easy if you just give me your purse." Again, I can't really explain this, but that just felt like such a cop-like thing to say. I don't know if you've ever been in that kind of situation, but you kind of just freeze when someone surprises you like that. It's not really fear. Your body doesn't know how to react. I almost think my body didn't let me get too scared, because if it did, then I'd have had a heart attack. It was like my body was saying, wait until it's safe, then panic. First, I felt relieved that he wasn't actually a cop. Thank goodness for that. Second, when he said it was okay and that we could make it easy, it actually calmed me down a bit. So I managed to say, okay, can I just give you my cash? My purse has my phone, pictures, and other stuff. He agreed to that. I opened my purse and took out all the cash. I had about $200. He watched me closely as I did it. He took the money and said something like, if you tell anyone, I will find out. Then he left. I felt really calm for the rest of the walk home. The next morning, it hit me that I had been mugged. That's when the panic set in. I started shaking and crying. Even as I'm writing this story now, it gives me chills. I had never seen that guy before. When he said, I know you have money, I don't know if he meant he knew about my dealing or if he was just trying to scare me. Honestly, I'm really glad this all happened because it made me get out of that business at the right time. Things were only going to get more dangerous from there. It's still scary thinking about it, but that guy saved me without even realizing it. I told my aunt's boyfriend what happened and that I was too scared to keep doing this anymore. He told me to send all my customers to him instead. I did, and that was the end of it for me. It's been almost 10 years now, and I haven't looked back since. At the time I'm writing this, the story that happened to me was 5 days ago. It was on a Saturday, and for context, I am a 16-year-old French boy. So I was with my friend this Saturday in my small French hometown, casually hanging out at the edge of town for about an hour. My friend is a 17-year-old girl. We were sitting on big rocks behind the kindergarten school, right in front of the beet field, around 8 p.m. The sky was starting to get dark. Nothing ever really happens in our town, except recently when a father stabbed his daughter and wife 40 times. But that has nothing to do with my story. Also, there aren't many foreigners here since it's a small country town near Paris. Anyway, we were sitting eating snacks like we usually do when we hang out, when suddenly, I noticed a man with a beanie. He had his hands in his sweatshirt and was walking directly toward us. He was already too close for my friend and me to get up and walk away. He came right in front of us and started speaking in English. My friend doesn't speak English, so she didn't really understand what was happening at the time. The guy noticed I could speak English and tried to shake my hand, which I refused. He didn't seem drunk or on drugs. The man started talking to me and pointed at the field behind me. To look at it, I would have had to turn my back to him. He kept insisting, saying, "Is that cabbage?" I said yes, but he wasn't satisfied with my answer. He was trying to get me to turn around, which made me nervous because he was standing less than a meter away from me, close enough that he could have done anything. He kept trying to make me look, saying strange things like, "My driver told me there was cabbage," and "I asked people, but they didn't understand." After saying that, he patted my shoulder and crouched at the edge of the field, asking me to come over to check if it was cabbage. I had already told him multiple times it was, even though it wasn't. I just wanted to get rid of him, but it did sort of look like cabbage. As soon as I was out of his reach, I told my friend to grab her bag and run. At first, she thought I was joking, but when she saw me running, she followed. We were about 20 meters away when I looked back and saw him start walking toward us, but he quickly disappeared behind the kindergarten school. Both of us were really unsettled and wanted to get home. We said goodbye and went in different directions. I had to pass by the elementary school next to the kindergarten to get home, and suddenly, I saw the guy again. He was coming from the road between the field and the kindergarten, holding his phone in his hands. I quickly turned around and went to my friend's house instead, where I waited for her father to drive me home. Later that night, my friend and I were talking, and we started to wonder if this could have been an attempt at kidnapping or something worse, like organ trafficking. It was the first time we'd ever seen a foreigner alone in our town who didn't speak a word of French. The way he got up and disappeared as soon as we started running made me think that his cabbage talk was just a trick to get me to move away from my friend. We wondered if he had texted someone waiting in a car to kidnap one of us. It really felt like he was trying to waste our time with the whole cabbage thing. Later that night, I told a friend who also lives in our town about what happened. He said the same guy had been acting strangely around town that day too. We were really freaked out after the event, but now we feel okay. Still, I can't help but wonder if we're overreacting about this guy, even though my intuition told me to get away from him. If anyone has any thoughts, or if this seems like something that has happened to others, I'd appreciate the insight. Last year I started law school in Los Angeles. I had never lived in a big city before, and I was really excited to be in a massive place with over 4 million people. Ever since I was little, I always knew I had a half-sister in LA, but my parents had this weird anger toward her, which made it feel like a taboo topic. Of course, I had looked her up on social media and knew what she looked like, but that was about it. We had never actually met. She wasn't very active on social media, so there wasn't much I could learn about her. Out of nowhere, during my first year of law school, I got a friend request on Facebook from my sister. Her profile seemed legitimate. She had Facebook friends, and her profile picture looked like her. She sent me a message inviting me to a little dinner party in the park with her friends. We could finally meet each other for the first time. I was new to LA and had no idea which parts of the city to avoid at night. I was excited about the idea, but also very anxious. It would be amazing if we met, totally clicked, and became best friends. But what if things didn't go well? What if we ended up in tears like in some dramatic movie? What if I tried talking to her and she didn't click with me or showed some attitude? Or worse, what if things were going well until we had a disagreement? Someone said something hurtful, and we both ended up crying in front of everyone. Honestly, if she had suggested a cozy little bakery for desserts, I would have gone. But a park, with a bunch of people, didn't feel right for such a precious moment. I didn't want to share that first meeting with a crowd. I couldn't bring myself to go. I was too afraid of how messy it could get. I didn't want to risk having an emotional breakdown in front of strangers. A few weeks later, I decided to Google the park to see what it was like, thinking maybe we could meet there one-on-one. That's when I realized something was very wrong. I won't name the park, but anyone who has lived in LA for a while will tell you it's not a safe place for girls to have a dinner party at night. The area around it has a very high violent crime rate. It's controlled by gangs, and even people doing illegal business there have to pay a tax to the gang to be left alone. I was really concerned and curious at that point. I tried to get in touch with my sister directly. She was an undergrad at a local college, and I had a friend who went to the same school. I asked my friend to reach out to her and see if she'd be okay with meeting us. They connected, and the three of us met at my friend's house. It was great. We got along really well, and my friend was happy to help. The three of us had a lot of fun. We didn't burst into tears, but we did shed a few. We had dinner, watched a movie, and spent the night at my friend's house. When I told my sister about the Facebook invitation, she said she hadn't used Facebook since high school. Clearly, someone had been impersonating her. I would have told her to report the fake account, but by then, it had already been deleted. She knew she had been impersonated before, though. Another one of her friends had been scammed by someone pretending to be her in a scheme involving fake concert tickets. Someone had been pretending to be my sister, knew I was in town, and tried to lure me to one of the most dangerous parts of LA at night. I have no idea what their motives were, and I don't think I want to find out. Meeting my sister after all these years was a beautiful experience, but the whole situation was terrifying. I grew up in a small town, primarily Hispanic, where everyone knew everything. We had our share of incidents here and there, but overall not much really happened. I'm overweight, to put it simply, and I don't exactly fit society's beauty standards. I remember reading a meme online once that joked, "Can't kidnap me, you can't carry me, keep eating cake." I laughed at it and thought, so true. Little did I know that would come back to haunt me. I was around 18 or 19 and it was nighttime. My weed plug was doing a stash and dash, and being broke and desperate, I went for it. I thought, I grew up here, I know all the areas. Plus, the stash wasn't far from where I lived, so I figured, why not? I was on a video call with my boyfriend and told him I was going for it. He stayed on the phone with me as I headed out. Mind you, it was late. The areas I had to cross weren't well lit, and I left the house with nothing on me, not even the taser, alarm, or pepper spray my dad always insisted I carry. Oh, and to make it worse, I snuck out because I didn't want my dad to know I was hunting for weed. So, off I went. To get to the stash, I had to cross railroad tracks that were pitch black, except for the distant light from the main road and a nearby warehouse. Other than that, it was hard to see anything. As I neared the main road, I noticed a semi-truck parked on the side. That wasn't unusual. Semi-trucks parked there all the time, ever since I was little, so I didn't think much of it. Then I heard, "Hola! Hey!" I looked over and saw a man in the truck. He looked pretty average, a Mexican man in a red long-sleeve shirt, the type of guy I'd see around town. But his smile, something about it felt off. I waved to be polite, and he gestured for me to come over, speaking Spanish. But I don't speak Spanish. Now I know what you're thinking. Why don't you speak Spanish if you grew up in a Hispanic town? And why aren't you running? Well, my parents never taught me, so sue me. And as for running, he was still far away, so I just kept walking. I sheepishly responded, "No hablo español," the one phrase I learned, and waved him off, quickly walking away. My boyfriend asked who it was, and I told him, "Just some random truck driver." After about 40 minutes of searching, I realized I wasn't going to find the stash. Big disappointment. So I started heading back home, still on the phone with my boyfriend. My phone was dying, which was what prompted my boyfriend to tell me to go home. As I approached the dark railroad area, I suddenly stopped. Something didn't feel right. I had a bad feeling. I told my boyfriend I was going to check out the other end of the street instead, where there was more light from the warehouse, passing some empty trailers partially hidden by shadows. As I walked into the light, I heard movement behind me and a voice saying, "Hey." I turned around quickly and saw the same semi-truck driver, wearing the same unsettling smile. He had come out from behind a trailer and had his right hand tucked in his pocket, positioning his body as if he was trying to hide something. He told me to come here, and started walking toward me. I immediately told my boyfriend to wake up his dad and come get me. I backed up quickly, trying to think. The man saw me on the phone and his expression changed. He looked angry and annoyed. He stopped and started hiding behind the trailers again. I took off running, telling my boyfriend to either come get me or send his dad. I didn't want to call my dad because for some reason I was still more terrified of getting caught sneaking out. I ran across the main road to a mini-mart and hid behind an ice machine. I told my boyfriend I needed to call someone and hung up on him, then called my friend who was luckily out with his girlfriend. I told him I was in danger and needed him to come get me, explaining where I was. While I waited, I stayed behind the ice machine and watched the semi-truck. I saw the driver looking around for me, shaking his head in disappointment before finally driving off. Even then, I didn't feel safe. Not until my friend pulled up. When he got out of the car, everything hit me and I hugged him, crying. His girlfriend and he calmed me down and took me home. I got a little lecture from my boyfriend, but honestly, I'd take that lecture over anything else. I was lucky, way too lucky. The false sense of security I had because of my weight and looks shattered after that. And I'm glad it did. It terrifies me to think how things could have turned out if I hadn't had my boyfriend on the phone with me.